Hi, my name is Jeffrey Wilson. I'm the author of the book, The Instinct for Cooperation, a graphic novel conversation with Noam Chomsky. It is available on Seven Stories Press. I have to say I am very, very excited that the book came out on Seven Stories Press, and I've just had a wonderful experience working with all of the people at the press. They've been really, really great and very, very kind to me. Today what I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is how I see this book fitting into what I'm calling the Chomsky interview literature. Okay, so what is a Chomsky interview literature? Well, I think if we consider sort of Chomsky giving interviews over the last 60 years or so, right, this literature is actually quite vast. Think of all the YouTube videos and Z Magazine and the Nation interviews that Chomsky's done over the years, right? And if we consider that, then we actually have this big body of work that Chomsky has been a part of. And I think that this actually represents a key sort of moral and ethical position of Chomsky. He really does believe that everyday people matter, right? I mean, why else would he give me, at the time I was a graduate student at the University of Arizona, why would he give me 28 minutes of his time, right? I mean, he could definitely be using that to write books, right, to help us understand sort of the world around us, right? But he specifically gives people time to interview him, right? Which I think, again, represents sort of a key moral or ethical position that he really does believe that everyday people matter. And that is actually an enactment of that, we could say, in a lot of ways. Now, there are what I would consider to be key foundational text within this Chomsky interview literature. And one of those foundations, I think, is definitely the work of David Barsamian. Now, he's been having a conversation really with Chomsky over the past 30 years or so. Actually, I have one of his books here, right, which you can get on Seven Stories Press also. But David's work is really great because what it does is it offers people a way into Chomsky's thinking, right? So rather than maybe picking up, the 450-page book, The Fateful Triangle, based on, Chomsky's thoughts basically on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, you might pick up David Barsamian's book and get insight into how Chomsky understands something like the conflict. And I'm just using the conflict as one example. You could open that up to lots of different topics. So David Barsamian's work, I think, is foundational when we consider the Chomsky interview literature. The other really, really important work is the work of French filmmaker Michel Gondry. He did an animated film about 4 or 5 years ago now, and it was a conversation with Noam, and it was based on Noam's philosophical and linguistic work, right? And this film by Michel Gondry is animated, right? So it's a creative endeavor. It's a creative project. So my book, The Instinct for Cooperation, I think fits sort of in between those two works, right? It's an interview on the one hand, so it's related to Barsamian's work, but because it's a graphic novel, it's also creative work also, okay? So that's how I see it fitting in the work. But I also see it importantly contributing to the Chomsky interview literature. Right, so during a typical Chomsky interview, right, a phrase like "Tucson knows all about that," right, which is something that he brought up sort of in passing in the interview I did with him, and then he moved on and continued talking about Zuccotti Park and removing of books from Zuccotti Park, right. So I think in a normal Chomsky interview, that phrase would have been glossed over. Okay, the reader would have been left to wonder what Chomsky meant by Tucson knows all about that, or in all likelihood it might have been edited out because it was just not within the context of the general conversation. So what I was able to do, or what I did do in the book then, was I took phrases like that and I opened it up. So when Chomsky said Tucson knows all about that, what he was referring to was the banning of Mexican American studies at Tucson Unified School Districts in 2011, 2012. So what I did then is I went back and I interviewed teachers that were involved in the Mexican American Studies program and a student that was involved in the Mexican American Studies program. So what that does then, and it's why I think this is an important contribution to Chomsky's work, is it's able to take phrases and and sentences like that, and it opens it up in a way that I haven't seen really other interviews do. The other important thing that does then also is it sort of decenters Chomsky as the authority, right? So we bring in people, right, on the ground, people that have experienced this program and went through the banning of the program, right? And we hear from their perspective. So rather than Chomsky talking to us from MIT about his thoughts on the banning of Mexican American studies, right, I was able to bring in the voices of people on the ground there, right, and contextualize and open out just that one phrase that he had in our interview. Okay, so that's how I think this book, The Instinct for Cooperation, a graphic novel conversation with Noam Chomsky, is important in terms of the broader Chomsky literature. I hope this was informative. Please rate me if you have any questions, and yeah, thanks so much. Bye.